At the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles, the stage lights were burning brighter than they ever had before, creating a kaleidoscope of hues that floated about the venue. It was the final episode of American Idol Season 23, which was to take place on May 18, 2025, and the air was filled with palpable excitement. With his hands securely gripped together and his heart beating like a drumline, Jamal Roberts, who was 22 years old, stood in the center of the stage. A timid smile was supplied by his rival, Lila Monroe, who was standing just across from him. The voice of the host, Ryan Seacrest, resounded around the arena as he said, "America, you voted. What is the name of the winner of American Idol 2025? Jamal's thoughts immediately went back to the point when everything started. Although he was born in Mobile, Alabama, he spent his childhood in a modest shotgun house, where music served as both an escape and a blessing. During her time off, his mother, who was a nurse who worked double shifts, would relax by singing gospel hymns. Her voice would fill their crowded living room with a sense of hope. Her talent was passed on to Jamal, but it was his grandmother's old radio that was tuned to soul, R&B, and Motown that was responsible for shaping his vocal style. At the age of 10, he taught himself how to play the guitar by strumming along to songs by Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder on a used instrument that was in poor condition. His voice was a raw, soulful power that hushed crowds, and by the time he was 16 years old, he was performing at church and local open mic nights. Life, however, was not kind. Jamal's father left when he was 5 years old, and after that, money was always a problem. At the age of 19, he was involved in a car accident that resulted in a fractured wrist and medical bills, which shattered his hopes of attending music school. In order to break up the monotony of his work, he decided to get a job at a warehouse where he would stack boxes under fluorescent lights while humming to himself. When Jamal's best friend Marcus submitted an audition tape for American Idol in secret, Jamal shrugged it off. That is, until the callback came. In Atlanta, the audition was a haze of confusion. The song "A Change Is Gonna Come" by Sam Cooke was performed by Jamal as he was standing in front of the judges, Bryan, Carrie Underwood, and Lionel Richie. Carrie's eyes welled up with tears as she heard his voice, which was full of both anguish and hope. With his eyes wide open, Lionel moved in close to his son and whispered, "Son, you have a gift that has the potential to change the game." It was as if the golden ticket to Hollywood was a lifetime opportunity. Hollywood Week was a test for him. Jamal experienced a sense of alienation as he was surrounded by highly skilled performers. To contrast with the glitter of Los Angeles, his worn-out sneakers and blazer from a thrift store stood out. However, the silence in the room was broken when he sung the song "If I Ain't Got You" by Alicia Keys. It wasn't simply that his voice was powerful, it was also honest, carrying the weight of every difficulty that he had ever encountered. Week after week, he continued to make progress by pouring his heart and soul into performances that combined gospel, R&B, and soul music. "Lean on Me" by Bill Withers was performed by him during the Top 20 round, and his interpretation of the song became viral, with 10 million views on YouTube after just one day. He was referred to as the voice of a generation by his fans on. It wasn't an easy battle to beat. Nashville-based pop phenom Lila Monroe, who was only 19 years old at the time, had an audience that was comparable to his. Because of her vivacious personality and flawless voice, she quickly became a favorite among the judges. Then there was Diego Alvarez, a celebrity who was fluent in 2 languages and whose Latin pop fusion music captivated fans. Jamal fought against his own self-doubt, wondering if his unrefined and raw style could compete with others. Carrie, however, took him aside after a practice and spoke to him in a commanding tone, saying, "Jamal, don't try to be anyone else. Your narrative and your voice are the source of your power." By the time Jamal reached the semifinals, he had found his rhythm. He received a standing ovation for his own song, "Rise Up Slow," which is a deep ballad about perseverance for the audience. The song was described by Bryan as a hit record right now. He was able to connect with viewers through the song, which was inspired by his mother's late-night prayers as well as his own lengthy shifts. #Jamal Roberts and #RiseUpSlow caused a jump in the number of posts on, and his streams on Spotify increased significantly. a classic, not only with his voice, guest star John Legend, and Jamal's own original hit were the three songs that Jamal performed throughout his set. In his rendition of the timeless classic, he chose A Song for You by Donny Hathaway, delivering a performance that was so personal that it felt like a confession. Their voices blended together in a way that seemed like they were having a conversation during the duet that they performed with Legend, titled Ordinary People. It was the song Rise Up Slow that ultimately decided his fate. When he finished singing the last note, tears were running down his cheeks and the audience erupted in support. "That's how you win a show," Lionel Richie explained as he rose up and applauded the performance. Jamal's recollections were shattered by the sound of Ryan Seacrest's voice as he returned to the present. There is no doubt that Jamal Roberts is the victor of American Idol 2025. Specks of gold and silver sparkled in the light as confetti fell from the sky. When Jamal was crying, his knees buckled, and he covered his face with his hands. The words, "You deserve this," were said by Leela as she gave him a hard hug. During the moment that his mother and Marcus went onto the stage and embraced him with tears in their eyes, the crowd began to scream his name. When Jamal was giving his victory speech, his voice was shaking. "I am dedicating this to my mother, who never gave up. For my grandmother, who is currently observing from heaven. Keep going, everyone who is out there who is feeling like their aspirations are too great for them to achieve. Slowly get to your feet." The audience applauded, and they swamped the internet with messages that referred to him as an inspiration. There were 50 million views of his performance of Rise Up Slow by the morning, which shattered streaming records. His performance was the closing piece. It was a frenzy of activity in the weeks that followed. The song Rise Up Slow was the first song to debut at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart after Jamal secured a record deal with Capitol Records. During his performance on The Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon referred to him as the future of music. Jamal, however, maintained his poise. At the same time that he wiped off his mother's debts and relocated her into a new house in Mobile, he also initiated a music program for children living in his area. Despite being the champion of American Idol Season 23, Jamal Roberts was not the only winner. He was evidence that a voice that was created out of adversity might reverberate all over the world. "A change is going to come," he said to himself as he stood backstage following the conclusion of the show, holding the golden microphone prize he had won. Moreover, it had previously done so for Jamal.